This is the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast, a very unique opportunity to visit with the presidents of American Farm Bureau and Ohio Farm Bureau. President Zippy Duvall on my left, President Bill Patterson on my right. Great to have you both on the podcast. And Zippy, whenever I have to talk to you, it's either at AFBF convention or in D.C., but now you're in my neck of the woods now. What brings you to Ohio?
Well, we come over here to visit with some farmers, visit with leadership, and talk about membership and the value that we strive so hard to bring to our members.
Bill, when you and Zippy work together, what does that relationship look like? Obviously, you're president of a state Farm Bureau organization working with AFBF. How does that dynamic work?
Yeah, one of the true pleasures I've had since being able to take on this position is when we go to Washington to visit American Farm Bureau, to be able to work with Zippy and the other states. That is a group of people. There are 50 states, and in Puerto Rico there are 51 leaders out there that truly want to see what's best for the farmer. And so everybody works together, whether it's sharing ideas, sharing, working together on policy. Everybody's out there working, and Zippy leads a great organization and inspires those to work together.
President Duvall had a chance yesterday here in Columbus to learn more about our relationship with The Ohio State University, that controlled environment ag facility they have there at Waterman Farms. Had a chance to learn more about Nationwide and how Ohio Farm Bureau began that company many, many years ago, back in 1926. But now we're out here on a farm, and I have to imagine for you, as much as getting to see history and talk about Ohio Farm Bureau and Nationwide and Ohio State, being on farms with our farmer members has to be one of the best parts of your job as you travel the country.
It is. I've been to all 50 states and Puerto Rico, and not to see the sights unless you want to see the sights on rural America roads with the farmers and ranchers. And I've felt the hospitality of farmers from one end of this country to the other. And we may think a little different, talk a little different, but at the end of the day, we family and we're friends. And we all come together with that one united voice to make sure that we're advocating for agriculture and making the future brighter for our families and our communities.
You mentioned future, and who knows what that looks like, but we're getting some ideas, President Patterson, of what Ohio Farm Bureau members look like in the future. We've done some research. We've asked them what they need from our organization moving forward, and boy, times are changing, and we're going to have to evolve along with our members to be where they are with our membership.
There's no question about it. I mean, one of the things yesterday with President Duvall, we went to the archives at Nationwide, and there was an old picture of a tree basically representing the grassroots of the organization, and starting with informed members and making sure that our members are advocates, because at the end of the day, we're an advocate organization, and that's what we do. We're here to stand for the farmer and make sure that we can all remain in agriculture for the long term and feed the world, quite frankly. And so we saw that, and it just continues to punctuate the fact that this whole organization, from President Duvall's position to my position to the county leaders, results in those grassroots members building up policy and having that voice of agriculture that then AFBF unites into one voice.
Yeah, and President Duvall, you've seen what Ohio is working on as we look to the future 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and what our members expect from us, and you see that we have to adjust. Agriculture, as we see this equipment behind us, is changing by the day with the technology and the mythology and the thought process that goes along with growing and raising the food supply for the U.S. and the world. At the national level, there at AFBF, what are some things you're seeing as far as membership and the ways that you might have to adjust as an organization from a federal level?
Well, we've really done a lot of work on the way we communicate with our members. With our member states, we've went back kind of old style. But with a new twist, and that was through Zoom, and we were working in that direction, and then COVID come along and forced us there. It really just made us take on that technology and really learn how to use it. But we've started having monthly or weekly calls during COVID from every department in American Farm Bureau to every department in every state farm bureau across the state on a Zoom, listening to what their problems are, asking the question, what can we do for you to make sure that your members are engaged, and making sure that they understand at the national level what we're doing each and every day on issues like environment and waters of the U.S. and Prop 12 and so many things that we deal with each and every day. Because at the end of the day, we work for the farmers and ranchers. And the only way we're going to find the answers to those questions is through a policy book and communicating on a weekly or monthly basis with Bill and his staff here in Ohio.
Before I let you go, both of you, I need to ask you about one of the tougher questions we had here today, and that is getting younger people involved in Farm Bureau. You mentioned the policy work we do. That there's certainly reason to join there. As you look at people that are in college, coming out of college, starting to maybe think about a career in agriculture, how do we get them into the fold? How do we get them involved at the level we need them to be?
Well, one thing is that most young people don't have a clue of the amount or the opportunities that they have to be part of agriculture, whether it be in people that serve us on the farm, or whether it be on the farm, or whether it be managing, whatever that might be. There are more jobs in agriculture than there are students graduating from agriculture school every year all across America. And so they need to be aware of it. Our outreach, we're trying to make sure our outreach to young people is better, and doing it in a way through our communications, through my podcast, through social media, and trying to be in the places that they are at when they have time to sit and look at their phone or their computers, to make sure that they see from the outside the value that this organization can bring to them and their families. And then, of course, I talk a lot about community and family. I've heard that here. I've often said that I felt community more in southwest Kansas than I had anywhere in America until this week. And I felt the feeling of community here in Ohio. But I don't know why that surprises me, because we've had great partners with this state Farm Bureau and the county Farm Bureaus when we approach the stress level of our farmers, and through Farm State of Mind program, trying to help our farmers going through very difficult times because of the challenges that agriculture is facing.
And I do want to thank you for what you've done for the farm stress and mental health aspect in agriculture, having Ohio's own Brandon Fulenkamp on your podcast a couple weeks ago and bringing light to the topic.
What a tremendous story, and you never know who you might touch, and I know that young man's touched a lot of people because he got touched himself.
Bill, these younger people we are putting a focus on here as we strategize for the future of Ohio Farm Bureau. Ag literacy, youth pathways, leadership development. We've been there, but we're really starting to amplify how we reach those people in our organization too.
Yeah, a lot of times we use this phrase being a welcoming organization, and that's so important as far as what we're trying to do is you got to define what is a welcoming organization. What do we mean when we say welcoming organization? Well, we mean that when you are in a high school, and we were even talking about kids in the back of the YAP program, babies crying, and how welcoming of a sign that is, because that means you have a vibrant, live, flowing organization. And so welcoming means, what are we going to do to make sure, so at the end of the day, what are these individuals, those youth that might otherwise want to be engaged with us, what do they need from us to do that? And as an advocacy organization, how do we make an informed member, right? So how do we make an informed member and recognize, and when they have times and they have other life obligations, we all know that. I'm right in the middle of life with children, and how wonderful that is. So how can I still be involved and advocate for farmers while having that out there? And so I think Farm Bureau is really looking at a lot of the stuff we're doing is just talking about how we can adapt to that, and how we can make individuals, they're going to walk into preschool and they're going to see their friend who is a state legislator, and they can just have a conversation about what they're doing farming. I mean, so how do we equip them to the level that they want to be equipped to be welcome and allow for that, so that when there's time, if it ever becomes that we have more time, I haven't found that yet, but when it does become having more time and you can become more engaged, you're still involved with the organization. You're still strong with Farm Bureau.
I see future policy putting 26 hours in a day. Maybe that will change things. Bill Patterson, President of Ohio Farm Bureau, Zippy Duvall, President of American Farm Bureau, our guest on the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ty.
Since 1919, Ohio Farm Bureau has been working for you, advocating for farm families, for Ohio agriculture, and our local communities. From the State House in Columbus, all the way to Washington, D.C., Ohio Farm Bureau is feeding your need for new ideas. As we look towards the future and the changes coming along with it, one thing will never change: our mission. working together for Ohio farmers to advance agriculture and strengthen our communities. Learn more and become a member today at ohiofarmbureau.org.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast, continuing our conversation with leaders from Ohio Farm Bureau and American Farm Bureau. This time, the executive vice presidents of the organizations, respectively, Joby Young and Adam Sharp. Great to see you both, and this is a really unique opportunity to visit with you guys from the American Farm Bureau level and the Ohio Farm Bureau level, but you guys communicate a lot. So how does that relationship, Joby, work between you and Adam, and what's that dynamic look like there?
Well, yeah, of course, we're happy to be out here on the farm today in Ohio. It's a beautiful day, and I think this represents a lot of what we do together. Getting out and meeting with members and connecting everything from the local and county level through the state up to the national level, and seeing how we do so many of the things that the Farm Bureau family does, whether that's policy and advocacy or communication or membership, and how it's connected from top to bottom, and we each do a piece of it. You know, whether that's an audience at a national level in Washington, D.C., or a group we're trying to speak to or communicate with or tell that ag story at the state level and every level in between.
Ohio's always been kind of a microcosm of American agriculture. We have a very diverse ag system in Ohio, and that really helps with the conversation you have with Joby and his team.
It does, and you know, one of the things, everybody talks about the difficulty and the problems and all the issues that happened with COVID, but I'll tell you, one of the great things that came out of it is American Farm Bureau. Joby and also President Zippy Duvall started doing these. They started off, you know, every week really, because there was so much happening, and then it evolved to every couple weeks and every month. These, you know, video calls to just talk about what's going on, and that was something we didn't do before. And now these guys are on very consistently. Here's what's happening. Here's what's happening with policy. Here's what American Farm Bureau is up to. Share what you're hearing out there in the states, and that dialogue is constant. And so either myself or our president, Bill Patterson, are on those calls, and or if we miss them, they're recorded. Oftentimes we can also hear the conversations, but to hear that constant communication is great. I mean, we get all the emails and we get all the resources sent to us, which we utilize constantly, but having that opportunity to have that constant dialogue has been something that's been an added bonus, frankly, since COVID. It's kind of nice.
I'm just now realizing, Joby, this is the first time on this podcast for you, and you've been here since July of last year, so I apologize for not doing this sooner, but give me your assessment of your first year on the job, and what you think of American Farm Bureau and where you think it's going.
Well, it's been a great experience for me, working internally to the Farm Bureau, being part of the team and the Farm Bureau family. Of course, in my career, I've worked with Farm Bureaus across the country. Originally, I'm from Georgia and grew up a Georgia Farm Bureau member. And then worked with Georgia Farm Bureau from initially as a policy conversation, and then nationally I worked at USDA, and Adam and I have similar backgrounds, being on the sort of policy maker side of things and seeing how that operates, and working with Farm Bureau folks across the country in those positions that we've both had, and so we've seen sort of the magic and more recently for me of Farm Bureau and how effective the Farm Bureau family is, and so it was really a great experience for me in the last 11 months or so to be a part of the team and really see how those gears turn and be a part of contributing to that, and seeing how effective the Farm Bureau approach is.
A unique perspective that you came from, seeing just how powerful our membership was in getting the message across to lawmakers about what our policy is and what needs to be done to keep agriculture sustainable. So you saw the strength of the organization before you got here. Talk about that. I don't think our members hear enough about just how powerful their voice is in DC.
Yeah, that's right. We're here on the Hummel's farm here in Ohio, and we're talking about, today was mostly membership, but I've done a lot, umpteen number of visits like this across the country with policymakers, members of Congress, cabinet secretaries, Secretary of Agriculture, White House officials, all the rest, and state officials, of course, and had those policy conversations and said 100 times, man, what a great visit. You know, we're walking through and we're seeing how this actually affects a farm family, how it affects the farm business, how it affects the rural community you're in, and all those sorts of things. And Farm Bureau does that great, does it better than anybody across the country, whether you're in Ohio or you're Oregon or Maine or Florida or wherever you might be. Does a great job of that. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that have been developed over the decades that contribute to that effectiveness. But, some of those things might be a committed staff, committed leadership, but really at the root of it is committed membership. and folks like the Hummels that have been involved. They've sort of offered up their home and their story and their experiences to contribute to that conversation, and that's really the sort of secret sauce, I think, to making these effective conversations happen.
Adam, you and I could fly to Washington every other week, and our policy teams could be out there. But if it doesn't come from our members, it really doesn't matter, does it?
That's right. We always talk about the three-legged stool in this space and policy. At least that's always been my analogy, and it's pretty simple. It starts with the grassroots, right? And it matters there first and period. If the legislators aren't hearing it from the members, it doesn't matter what the lobbyists tell them. But it does take all three things. And what do I mean by that? Well, it takes the grassroots, setting the policy and advocating for the policy. Critical, right? It also takes to have that good lobbying staff, the people that have the relationships with the leadership, with those lawmakers, with those administrations, to be able to talk about the timing. What's the timing? What's the tenor? What's the message? When's the best time to be the most effective you can be? You got to have that piece. And the third part, frankly, is PAC. It's money. In Ohio, we have a PAC. And you got to be able to also help open that door too, to build those relationships with money. Being elected costs money. It's expensive. You got to play in that space too. So those three pieces together make all the difference in the world. Joby's got those strong relationships on Capitol Hill. He came from Capitol Hill and then USDA. Of course, I did a little time at US EPA in DC back in the day, and we can both tell you that from that other side of the coin, when you're working in an administration, it matters when the farmers are coming through the door, right? When the Farm Bureau members are coming, when they're talking to you, when they're squawking about something that they're not happy about, you're in the administration and you're in a place a place that is affecting agriculture by your decisions. It matters, and Farm Bureau is that voice, right? And we've seen it from both sides of that fence, and it's important. The relationships are one of the critical parts of that. Somebody like Joby and Zippy, who spent all kinds of time developing those relationships in Washington to understand when's the best timing to do things, right? How's the best way to go about this? How to guide the membership to make sure we can be effective. Those are critical parts of what these guys do every day for us in Washington, D.C.
And our members have told us lately that advocating for agriculture, number one as far as the importance of Ohio Farm Bureau and American Farm Bureau. Adam Sharp, Executive Vice President of Ohio Farm Bureau. Joby Young, Executive Vice President of American Farm Bureau. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Find out how Nationwide Agribusiness can help you grow your business. Get to know the people with the experience and knowledge to help you. Whether you are looking to protect your farm or ranch from the ground up, or need someone who understands your changing commercial ag needs. Find out how to better manage the risks of your ag business, or how quickly you can get back to business. Learn how you can protect your next with Nationwide on your side.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. Visiting now with the Vice Presidents of Public Policy for American Farm Bureau and Ohio Farm Bureau. With American Farm Bureau, Sam Kiefer, and with Ohio Farm Bureau, Jack Irvin. Sam, it's great to have you here in the Buckeye State, and we're going to talk about some federal policy in a bit, but really curious about how Jack and his team fits into what you and your team does there in Washington.
Well, Ty, it's great to be in the great state of Ohio, and more importantly, to be on a farm, interact with the staff and members of one of the 51 federated states that are part of the American Farm Bureau. What we do and how we do it is not rocket science, but it works. And we influence public policy the old-fashioned way, with shoe leather and with relationships. And a lot of folks that have the titles like Jack and I have, people think of lobbyists and people think of stroking checks to elected officials. The American Farm Bureau does not do that. We engage in conversations. We tell the story of farmers to elected officials, to appointed officials, to the staff, whether they be on Capitol Hill or in regulatory agencies. And we build not only the relationships at the American Farm Bureau level, but we rely on the relationships, and the secret to that is the grassroots volunteers, the Farm Bureau members who can vote for and against these elected officials. Those are the voices that add true credibility to the Farm Bureau message.
Jack, I think it's amazing when you think about some of the issues that we're dealing with here in Ohio. Meat processing, rural broadband, and of course we'll talk about the Farm Bill in a bit. Ohio is really kind of a snapshot of what we're dealing with on the federal level too. How does that help with your conversations with Sam and his team?
There's no doubt when you're looking at the 51 farm bureaus, as Sam pointed out, we have so many similar issues, particularly a lot of the rural issues, like you said, with broadband connectivity issues, making sure we have enough small and regional meat processors. Time and again, collectively, you hear those same issues when we have conversations. So we have a conversation every week with Sam's team and a lot of my colleagues across the country to compare notes on those conversations. And certainly those issues, it helps when we're kind of all coming together, sharing those ideas and recognizing, oh, we do have some of those same issues together. And it helps both Sam and I kind of prioritize what we go advocate for, so we know we're all kind of moving in the same direction when we're talking about meat processing or broadband connectivity, whatever those issues might be.
As we talk, Sam, we're getting through some debt ceiling conversations and trying to get that all ironed out. Hopefully by the time this airs, we'll be long past that and be able to focus on the 2023 Farm Bill, which the deadline is the end of September to get that signed, sealed, and delivered in order to move forward. Do you think that these negotiations with the debt ceiling, is there any tea leaves to read there as far as how negotiations might be coming along with the Farm Bill, and if we're going to be able to get something on the books in time?
I think so, and it's these were tea leaves that we were hoping to see as far back as January. It's no secret that this is a very divided Congress, very narrow margins in both chambers. The House Republicans can afford to lose 5 votes. After that, it needs to be bipartisan, and we knew as early as January that this Farm Bill needed to be bipartisan, not only because of the House, but because the Senate also gets a vote. And we need to achieve 60 votes in the Senate in order to move the darn thing. So this was, we know that bipartisanship is sometimes hard, particularly in Washington, D.C. It can be very divisive. But as Congress, and today, hopefully, Congress will be voting on the debt ceiling package. It was negotiated in good faith to be a bipartisan solution. From my vantage point, I expect folks on both sides of the aisle to be adamantly opposed to it. We also expect folks on both sides of the aisle to say there might be a few warts, but this is good enough to keep advancing the ball forward as we continue to work on the challenges facing our country. And I think that is a good testament to what we are asking for and calling for Congress to do in the Farm Bill later this year.
As if the challenges of bipartisanship weren't enough, Jack, we have almost 50% of lawmakers in Washington that have never even worked on a farm bill. Maybe some of them never even heard of the Farm Bill. That education piece, and where you come in with your team and you take members out to Washington to visit directly with lawmakers, such an important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sam mentioned earlier kind of our grassroots, having those farmers, whether it's meeting here in Ohio with their members when they're in town and, August recess coming up here, getting connected with them, or us going to D.C., connecting with our American Farm Bureau colleagues. So they have, expertise on the ground there every day, which is so beneficial to us. But as Sam noted, they have to have that support and that backdrop of those constituents coming and meeting with their legislators, telling them about the real world examples on their farm, why it matters, what does it mean for their communities, and without that partnership, we're just not going to be successful.
Sam, there are hundreds of parts of the Farm Bill that we are advocating for, but when you visit with lawmakers, you don't have a lot of time to go over every single point. What are the top 3 bullet points that we want in this Farm Bill?
The first thing we're asking is that it be done this year. The stakes are that high, and presidential elections are divisive, and 2024 is a presidential election year. So with each day that passes, we get closer and closer to the real heat of presidential primaries, and then ultimately general election. So getting the Farm Bill done this year is the most important thing. Beyond that, making sure that the safety net for farmers, be it crop insurance, the Title I programs, remain in place, but we can also improve upon them, particularly for specialty crop growers. Crop insurance is a viable tool, but there are still aspects of our industry where it doesn't work well enough. So looking to expand crop insurance into more commodities, make crop insurance easier, because it is complex. It's a very important tool, but it's also complex. And making sure that the Title I programs that are there, are truly important. Conservation program is also vital. We talk about it all the time, and our members wear it as a badge of honor to be, environmentally minded. I mean, they are the front line when it comes to conservation and keeping soil on the ground. And the Farm Bill programs through the conservation title, make that happen. And making sure that the conservation programs, that are there remain voluntary, and there are plenty of opportunities for us to engage in continued great work, but it's a result of funding through the Farm Bill. Broadband is a very important aspect of the Farm Bill. Academic research is a very important aspect of the Farm Bill. The largest part of the Farm Bill, however, almost 85%, is the nutrition title. And the nutrition title, whether it be women, infants, and children, supplemental nutrition assistance program, that is going to be an important part of it. And let's face it, farmers have long been committed to feeding their communities, and the Farm Bill is a way to do that. So making sure that we can keep the nutrition aspect of the Farm Bill tied to the rest of the Farm Bill is going to be important, because agriculture is where food comes from, and it makes perfect sense.
Sam Kiefer is Vice President of Public Policy for American Farm Bureau. Jack Irvin, Vice President of Public Policy for Ohio Farm Bureau. The Farm Bill is a heavy lift, and these guys and their teams can only do so much. It's going to rely on a lot of our members doing some of this legwork as well, and you can always keep up on how you can help with the Farm Bill discussion at Farm Bureau's website on the American side at fb.org, and of course, ohiofarmbureau.org here in the Buckeye State. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.